Luke chapter 1, verse 16. And many of the children of Israel shall he turn to the Lord their God. So we see in his life, there's a public ministry. Notice what it says. His public ministry is very bountiful. In other words, what he's doing, what he is going to do in the future has great blessings, but is a very bountiful ministry. It says, many of the children of Israel. And it is also very influential. Look what the verse says. Many of the children shall he turn. So it has great influence. But it is the right kind of influence. And this is where we really want to focus on today. And many of the children of Israel shall he turn unto the Lord their God. See, we all allow ourselves to be influenced by something, don't we? All of us are under some kind of influence at any time, but you cannot be influenced by someone that you do not allow to influence you. Now, your spiritual influences and my spiritual influences better be those that turn me to the Lord, to the right one. That's the key. So here's the question you have to ask, and I have to ask. What are my influences, and to what are they turning me to, or to whom are they turning me to? See, this is key, because influences in dealing with counsel. Now, I'm going to ask you to turn to the scriptures, hold your place in Luke chapter 1, and go with me to Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 5. So we want to look at two areas on this issue of influence, just on what I allow to influence me. Okay, well, what about the area of counsel? Dealing with counsel, someone counseling me, helping me, all right? Now, we know that the Gospel of Luke tells us that John's ministry was very bountiful, and it was very, very influential because it turned many of the children of Israel. That's a very specific group of people. Now, look at me in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5 in dealing with counsel. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsel. So if you're a man of understanding and you understand the principles of the Bible, but you need some help, you better seek out wise counselors. Now, you know who in your life would be a wise counselor or not a wise counselor, right? And counselors need to be very careful that you always point people back to the Bible. There's many reasons for that. And I may have let the cat out the bag early, but let me tell you something. It's very easy to give someone's counsel, but you don't have to live with the consequences of your counsel, right? So it's easy to tell somebody, hey, you do this, but then you have to turn around and live with what counsel you follow. You say, well, what are you talking about? I'm talking about Ahasuerus. We're going to look at on Wednesday night that Ahasuerus sought counsel that was not good about a problem that was something that he could have contained. So what he did is he listened to a bunch of drunk, intoxicated wise men that gave him counsel that did not have to live with the consequences of their counsel for him. All right, now look at me in Proverbs 24, verse 6. Proverbs 24, 6. And notice with me what it says here in verse 6. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors there's safety. You know the problem is, if I'm not careful, you know what I have a tendency to do? I may have a tendency to find people to give me the counsel that would tell me what I want to do anyway. Right? You ever been a victim of your own stupidity? I have only a few times. That's not true. Okay, now look at me in Proverbs 13:20, and let me give you the second area. We need to be very careful on those that we allow to influence us when really what needs to happen is I need to be rebuked. Now notice what it says in Proverbs 13:20. He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Then this is the last one that's very important, is Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 5, just a few pages over. Ecclesiastes 7:5. There are times in our lives where we need someone to say, no, that's not right. Or we need someone to say, hey, what you're doing is wrong and you need to do this. Yes. So we have to be careful who we ask or we allow to influence our lives. Now, if you look with me in Ecclesiastes 7:5, it is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. Okay. Now, let's go back to Luke chapter 1, please. Luke chapter 1 and verse 16. And many of the children of Israel shall he turn to the Lord their God. How long have you been saved? I mean, are you a born-again Christian? How long have you been saved? Then the question would be this. Do you know that you have a responsibility to influence others for the cause of Christ? Okay, yes, I know that. All right, then here's another question. Then who are you influencing? Who in your life are you influencing for the cause of Christ? You see, a very famous man recently said this, and if I mention his name, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He is a premier intellectual, and I want you to listen to his testimony because it's very convicting on the issue of influence. People have asked me, and I'm quoting, people have asked me, do I believe in God? No, he says, but I'm afraid he probably exists. Do I act if God exists? Which I think I do my best in that. Listen to what he says. But there's a real stumbling block with that. And maybe it's not reasonable to say to believers, but you're not sufficiently transformed for me to believe that you believe in God. Or you will believe the story that you believe the story that you're telling me, but your life isn't sufficient testament to the truth. People would certainly say that, and then he starts talking about moral corruption in churches. Moral corruption in churches. Listen to what he says. He says, you tell me how Jesus Christ is real and how Jesus Christ has transformed my life, but there's yet such moral corruption in churches. And he says, really? Really? You say Jesus Christ is the Son of God and you act that way? And I'm supposed to believe what you say you believe? Man, what a testimony. John's ministry was a public ministry that was greatly blessed and mightily influential in the lives of other people. Hey, I want to put you on notice, but so is yours. Every person you know, every person you work with, every person you fellowship with, you have the opportunity to influence them toward the things of God. See, you think, well, my influence doesn't matter. I don't say anything. Has anyone ever heard you ever seen the original Marlboro? I hate that word. Marlboro Man. Who came up with that word anyway? Marlboro. Hey, anybody ever seen that guy? Come on, nobody? All right, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 100 and something, 300 people. Okay, the Marlboro Man was a rough, tough-looking guy. What did he wear on his head? Anyway. And was he clean-shaven or was he scruffy? He's scruffy. Now, he was a cowboy, and what did he do? What did the Marlboro Man do? He smoked cigarettes. He died at 90, and they say he never smoked. Died at 90, yet he never smoked. Now, here's the question. How many people do you think he influenced? Well, you just told me he wore a cowboy hat. You just told me he had a scruffy beard, and you just told me that he smoked cigarettes. See, don't think that you don't think, no, that's not right. Don't think that you don't have influence because you do have influence. We need to make sure that the man never said anything in those ads, nothing. But I remember as a little boy going through and they had cigarette ads in the magazines and all that kind of stuff. I remember seeing that guy. I'm thinking to myself, man, that's a tough looking dude right there. Right. Maybe. Anyway, how much did he influence me on wearing cowboy hats? I have no idea, but I've worn cowboy hats all my life, and you can take it for what it is. The point is this. Your influence can be for good or your influence can be bad. It really boils down to your choice. In 1 Peter, I want to ask you to turn with me to these scriptures. 1 Peter chapter 2. Please. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. Either way, as a child of God, your influence can go either way. Either way. Now notice what it says in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9. The Bible said, but you're a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people. Yeah. So what's my responsibility? I'm glad you asked. That you should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So here this man is of great knowledge. I personally, I think he's most likely a genius. I know one thing, he is, the intellectual level of this author is amazing. But yet he says, and I understand he's looking at other Christians, but you do understand that may be the first step that somebody has, is to notice there's something different about you that they don't have. There's some peace that you have that they don't have. There's some joy in their life that they don't have, but you have, and they come to you to seek what is different. I've had people ask me that question. Hey, what is different about your life? And bam, there's an opportunity to be able to influence them for the truth of the gospel. It is our responsibility to show forth the praises of him who hath called me out of darkness into his glorious, marvelous, wonderful light. Titus chapter 2, verse 7, please. Quickly, Titus chapter 2, verse 7. Notice what it says. In all things showing thyself a pattern of good works. So good, hey, by the way, good works doesn't save you. And if you think that works is going to save you to get you to heaven, you are a man most miserable. Do you know why? Because you're never going to be able to do enough to be able to lay your head on the pillow at night and think, if I died in my sleep, have I done enough? There's only two religions in the world. I don't care what you call them. There's a religion of works, and then there's the faith in Jesus Christ. The religion of works says you can do, but you never know if you've done enough. The faith in Jesus Christ said he shed his blood for you. He died on the cross, and he said, it's finished. The payment for sin is finished. The fulfillment of everything I was sent to do is finished. And he rose again, and Jesus Christ offers you eternal life. And eternal life is in Jesus, and Jesus Christ is eternal life. You cannot work your way to heaven. But when you're saved, you show a pattern of good works. Notice what the Bible said in doctrine showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity. Ooh, watch this one. This is big. Sound speech that cannot be condemned, that he is of the contrary part may be ashamed, having no evil thing to say of you. Hey, let me tell you something. I got a guy mad one time over a truck. This is years ago. I don't get people mad anymore. Man, you're a hard crowd this morning. Anyway, I got this guy. This guy said something about a truck. He's a mechanic. And I just said, sir, I'm not going to, I just said, sir, and I responded back to him. And he got so mad, he picked up a wrench. And I'm thinking, that's ridiculous. It wasn't a wrench like this. It's a wrench like this. And he gets mad at me. He starts woofing at me. You know what I said to him immediately? Sir, I have sinned against you, and I need you to forgive me. And I'm telling you, I didn't apologize. I didn't say I'm sorry. I said, sir, I've sinned against you by what I said, and I need you to forgive me. He said, come on back here. And we went and sat in the office, and I was able to share the gospel with him simply because I realized I was being stupid with my language. And I confess my sin to him. You and I, sound speech that cannot be condemned. In other words, we need to be very careful with what comes out of our mouth, because what comes out your mouth is influential, is it not? Yes. John 17, you don't have to turn there. I'm going to ask you to go to Philippians chapter 2. John 17, Jesus Christ said that they all might be one as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. Do you see that? Christ wants us to abide in him. Christ wants us to walk in oneness with God so that the world can see that Jesus Christ is who he said he is. Philippians chapter 2, notice what it says. Verse 13, for it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Do all things without murmurings and disputings. Why? Here it is, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation. Complain at work in front of lost people. Complain about what you got to do about this. Hey, sometimes we just need to zip it and do what you've been hired to do, right? I don't like that. Well, go get another job. Well, and then griping and complaining in the church. Here we go. Hey, listen, you better be very careful what you tell people on the outside, because they don't understand the context of what you're talking about usually. Just trying to help you. See, and here's the thing. It says this. Among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. I'm going to give you just 2 illustrations and we're done. I talked to my cousin, turns 90 on the 2nd of September. His name is Red Bowie. He was a missionary in Spain, and then he came back to America and pastored. He's 90 years old, and he started talking to me this week about influence of our home pastor. His pastor was my pastor. And he said, I remember how Brother Crumpton would take us to meetings. And if there was some area of service that needed help, he would ask the pastor, hey, I have these young guys with me. Can they help in this area? He said the influence that he made in my life was just amazing. My 80-year-old uncle said that Dr. Crumpton's influence in his life, he said, he totally transformed my life. My dad was sitting in a high school class answering Bible questions, and a man looked over him, Pearlie Dunn. He used to be the quarterback for the Cowboys. But in high school, he looked at my father and he said, James Crumpton really has put his mark on you, hasn't he? You see, there's sometimes you think your influence doesn't work. You think your influence doesn't matter, but it does. There's a preacher in a small town, and before he died, he had all his sermons stacked up. And on top of the sermons that he stacked up, he had a card, and on that card it says, where has gone the influence of all my sermons? Then he wrote on the bottom of it, over, and an arrow. And they flipped it over, and he said this. Where are last year's sun rays? They've gone into fruits and grain and vegetables to feed mankind. Where are the raindrops? Forgotten by most people, but they did their refreshing work, and their influence still abides. John's influence and your influence. Every head bowed, every eye closed.